Hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, I just wanted to start up with some intros and talk about some stuff. I posted the information on the previous session and the YouTube link, so you can watch the sound design and editing for video and film workshop there. That was from the last session in December. And today we'll be getting into sound mixing. So taking that same work flow and process and taking it into the mixing element. So yeah, so thanks for joining us. My name is Tom Strnad. I'm the lead digital artist of the Creator Space, and today we will be going over sound mixing for film and video. So I want to thank all of our partners in this project for making this happen. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, and we have our library partners. We have the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. Exciting news, we have equipment access. There are iMac computers that will be available at all these libraries. It's just a matter of once libraries are open again to access. And you can also look at our website to find out what equipment's available. Right now, currently, there is equipment that you can take out, just like you can books, at the Blue Mountains Public Library. And shortly, the same equipment will be available at the Wasaga Beach Public Library. So stay tuned for when that is available. And it's just a matter of taking a proficiency test for some of the equipment and going from there. It's really exciting. I encourage everyone to go to our website where you can look up more of our YouTube channel posted videos that are from past webinars. We have a lot on sound. So if you're interested in sound, we go over elements from how to do sound with iPads, how to use the digital sound recorders that you can access through the libraries, and things like this. How do we do sound in software? So the theories and concepts we'll talk about can be applied to different software. The software we're using for this particular workshop is Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve, and it's a free software that you can download. We're using version 17 right now. It's a public beta that I'll be showing. It's pretty similar to 16. There's just a few different features here and there, but just in terms of what we're using, so everyone knows. So again, it's fully downloadable. If you have any issues using 17, you can always go back to older versions, legacy like 16, 15, 14, and go back until you find one that can work. And most of this applies to that. The same ideas can be applied in Premiere or Avid Media Composer. So, all the software, non-linear editing software, has the same ideas that you finish your picture editing, and we can do a lot of the sound work in the same software now, which is really exciting. We will have some more sessions on the software called Pro Tools, that there's a Pro Tools First free version as well that you can do sound work in. And so we'll look at that as well in future sessions. So, lots to talk about. So let's get started. Okay, so today our overview, we'll be looking at sound mixing and defining it. What does sound mixing mean? We'll look at adding effects and filters and what that can mean as well, and why would we want to do that. Then we'll look at keyframe sound mixing, and we'll also look then at automated sound mixing in Fairlight, which is integrated into the Resolve software. So the way it works is that the Resolve software has a few tabs in the actual software. So we have a tab just for editing, and that's the Edit tab. There's a tab for effects, similar to After Effects, and it's called Fusion. Then there's a tab for, it has a music note, and that is Fairlight. So that's for all the sound work, sound mixing. There's one that has a color wheel, so that's for color, grading. And then there's also the rocket ship, which is the delivery tab as well. In a couple weeks time, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, there's a workshop on mastering. So we'll talk a little bit about mastering for film festivals and what that means. So that might be something of interest if you're looking at the mixing stage. How do you master from there? Okay, so let's define sound mixing. What does that mean? So sound mixing, and what I'm referring to is sound mixing for film and video. And it applies in general as well for music. Same kind of idea. We're dealing with multiple tracks. And so sound mixing in film and video, we're taking individual audio tracks in your edited sequence. And we talked about this in the last session. So we have elements such as dialogue, music, and sound effects, and we're taking all of those and combining them together to help tell the story. Now, if we just take them as they are, it could be a pretty noisy mess. So what's important here is to work on having levels. So leveling is essentially what our mixing is. So by combining them so that we can tell the story, and that's, I think, the key definition there. Depends what you want to do. If you want to try and tell, if we're in a trying to create a chaotic, noisy environment, we're in a city and it's traffic and a fire truck goes by, it's noisy, we can't maybe hear what the dialogue is. That could be on purpose. That could be how we're trying to tell the story, that there's chaos. On another way we can actually do it is, maybe the characters or the scene is underwater and we're trying to make it muffled and they're talking through masks. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's super clean. It just means that we're mixing to help tell the story. And that's always our guiding point, whether it's picture editing, sound editing, design, mixing. We're always trying to help better tell the story, whatever way that is. And sometimes that means that you can't hear stuff. You might intentionally mix things that, a character can't hear what someone else is saying and get rid of it. Or, there's been some great film moments where, a jet plane goes by, the other character can't hear the other character, maybe it's something important, and we might never know. And that's kind of part of that whole storytelling creative, the creative process and deciding, how you're going to approach things. So that's really important. How do we work on that? In the general consensus, what we're looking for really is trying to create levels that allow for depth, but that levels that don't obstruct the dialogue or other important elements. So, if someone's saying something and they're whispering, you have to be aware of what other elements are happening to make sure that you can still hear them, or you might have to increase the level of that whispering. So that's that whole kind of combination and leveling. And that's really what a lot of the mixing is leveling. And then what does that overall level, what should it be? So we've talked about this a little bit in past workshops in video and digital video and editing. And, the overall level we're looking at is really a, -6 to -20 decibels. And this is on the digital spectrum. So, how does that work? And it's, that -6 to -20, that range is kind of the comfortable viewing experience. Now things can be a bit quieter, they can even be a touch louder. Remember, 0, in the digital world, 0 is our total maximum, right? So if we're hitting 0, we're distorted and it's not possible to maintain that, right? So 0 is not our goal. Our goal is that comfortable -6 I recommend. And we'll look at a little bit at the loudness monitoring and metering in Fairlight that's built in, and actually gives us some, without any kind of adjustments, the defaults are quite effective. It gives you a warning if your mix is getting too loud. So it gives you a yellow if it's okay, it's permissible, and that means it's based on technical standards for delivering to television broadcasters or online platforms. And then there's also the red, and if it hits the red, that means that part is too loud. So that's a very technical monitoring side where we can really know, okay, that went a little too loud there, so it wouldn't pass the review for broadcast, for example. Generally, for a lot of us, we're putting things, you might be doing things on arts projects, or it's web-based. So you're not maybe concerned about that, commercial broadcasting side, but we still want to adhere to those same specs. I think that's a really good guideline. And again, that's where that -6 to -20 works as that kind of dialogue, comfortable zone, and music as well. We'll look at that as we go. Okay, so that is sound mixing. Now, we can also do things like adding filters and effects. And this could be used to improve the quality of the recorded sound. So that could be things such as dialogue that's too noisy. If the dialogue is too noisy, we can use something like an equalizer. And by equalizing, we can take out, so we can essentially, extract an air conditioning fan noise, and get rid of things like that in certain frequencies and reduce frequencies around the vocal range. So we can get rid of low end, high end, that kind of stuff to help improve the quality of it. There's also noise filters, dialogue processors. There's a whole bunch of different areas that we can do effects work on. And a lot of it usually comes down to the dialogue. And that means it's that the sync track that we talked about in last workshop, the sync track that, of the dialogue that's recorded on camera with actors, and you're trying to always preserve and make that as good as possible without having to redo it, because ultimately, it was done in the performance, and you want to try and achieve and maintain that. The other side is, if you're doing documentary films, you already did the interview, that you're trying to fix your audio. It's not like you can really go back and interview people again and again and again, right? So then we're just looking at trying to fix some of those elements and making it work with filters. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can also do things like effects. So we can put in effects on top of just filters, but we can put in effects such as delay. So we can be adding like creating an echo effect. We can enhance the type of space by creating a echo. So, if it's recorded and we're in a larger space and you're not really getting that kind of roominess, if you're in like a large hall and it doesn't sound like a large hall, by adding some echo or delay, we can make it sound like it's a bigger, roomier place. So making it sound like around a large hall, right? So that's really a neat way. So we can kind of reshape what's happening with some of the effects. We can also create things like a perception of a voice coming through a telephone. So that can be in a few ways. One is really simple. We can use an equalizer to put in get rid of low end and just put in a lot of higher frequencies and make it sound like it's on a phone, which is usually kind of worse recording quality, that kind of phone thing, or it's like it's coming out of the speaker of a phone. So those are the types of things we can create, that the perception of how sound is coming through, right? So some really cool ways we can work with sound. Okay, so now in terms of sound mixing types, so sound mixing primarily consists of these two types of functions. So we're usually just leveling or keyframe mixing in the editing sequence, and this is, in the picture side, that's usually the first thing I'm doing is if I'm, when I'm picture editing and I'm already kind of putting some levels in, because it's already hard if you are, let's say you're doing a documentary, you have an interview and someone's talking. It's hard to have music underneath it unless you've leveled it down a bit, so you reduce the volume of it. If it's blaring loud, you're not going to hear what the person's saying in the interview. So we've already kind of pre-mixed. So that's a real basic way. We did that already last week in the sound editing design. We didn't make it a fine-tuned final mix like we'll look at today and really leveling and mixing it. But what we were able to do is create it so that we can listen to it and that we can watch it for editing purposes. So that's, first stage tends to always happen that we have to do a little bit of that. The other thing we can do is if we have a lot of tracks like music and things that are loud and we don't feel like pre-mixing it, we can mute them. So I'll show you guys that as well, just review that. Muting, soloing, the two things we can do as well. Muting a track turns it off so that you don't have to hear it anymore. So that way if you had music, you can just hear the interview and turn the music off, right? So that's a really good way to deal with your picture editing while you're adding sound tracks, music, sound effects, that ambient room tones and things like that as well. The second way we're mixing is with faders. And, traditionally we're used to the, mixers with like fader knobs and, like the kind of faders you can move up and down. And that is what is portrayed on the screen now. So we have a digital faders. So there isn't any sound actually going through them. It's just a visual representation of the faders to give you that idea. Now, there are some surfaces still. We have that in the Blue Mountains Public Library, the computer lab. We bring in a digital fader And it's just like a kind of like a mouse. So it's a human interface device where you're just moving things up or down. And it acts like a traditional mixer with faders, but it's not actually having any sound go through it. So it's just a passive device that emulates what a mixer is. So fading, if you fade up, you make it louder. If you fade down, you're reducing the volume. So it's very easy to understand and comprehend visually that you're up, down for your volume. And that's why it works that way versus other ways. And when we're keyframing, it's the same idea. If we're keyframing, you'll see in the timeline, if it goes up, it's louder. If it goes down, it's quieter. So that up is loud, down is quiet, right? And that's one of those main things. The other thing we can do is we can also play with the pan knobs, left or right. And that allows us, because we're working in a stereo environment in terms of mixing, we technically can just work mono, and that means there's just the same thing comes out of both speakers and we're not worried about left or right. But generally we'll have the project, there'll be stereo tracks such as music, sound effects. And we may want to have our dialogue, let's say if someone's talking on the left or right or walking by, we may wish to pan it so that they're actually going from the left to right. So we can automate or we can mix that pan left to right as well as the levels going up or down. So that overall mixing, however many tracks, it could be 5 tracks, it could be 500 tracks, we're leveling all of those to get the desired effect. And that could be fading things in and out, making things go left and right. And that's the whole real essence of the full final mix of what we're trying to achieve. Okay, so let's explore how this works. Let's get right into the sequence. So let me just switch over here from the session. I'll go right into Fairlight here. So sorry, right into Resolve. So I'm in the Edit tab right now. And this is the project we worked on before. So I'm just going to turn on the sound for it as well. Let's just give it a listen in terms of what we did.
Top up. Top up. I'm ready for my library glam day.
Make my library glam day.
Okay, so that's our one of the cuts we did, and that was the with the horror film concept, and this is the one we did like the kind of normal story.
Top up. Top up. I'm ready for my library glam day.
Make my library glam day.
Okay, so, and again, so now it's a bit hard. So we did our dialogue editing, and that was, we worked on getting rid of, some of the tracks here that were the extra tracks for the different actors' mics. So we just cleaned that up. So if we want, we can solo or mute these tracks. And how we do that is we hit S to solo. That means we'll only hear track 1. And we can do that for as many tracks as we want. And then we can also use M, which mutes the track, and then we don't hear the track. So that can be really important as we mix. I like to actually do that way where I can kind of pre-mix my dialogue, make sure I'm happy with how the dialogue is. Then I move into doing the other mix on the room tones and the audio. So the first thing I want to show you guys is how do we work with what I call the keyframe editing. So what I can do is I can click on a track here, and what happens is at the top here under our inspector window, the top right here, I can go either from video to audio. So I want to make sure it's on the audio mode. You'll see here it has a plus 6.62. Now what I can do is I can actually reduce it. So I can just reduce it here, and look at how that the wave file here got really small, right? Watch what happens when I increase it. It gets a lot bigger, and that's just the amplitude of the whole wave. file. Okay, so we can do that. So I can just level. I can also just take my mouse and go right into the sequence and click and just go up and down, and it's going to tell me what the decibel levels are. So that's that kind of quick leveling way I can premix. So, I have all this dialogue, we'll just kind of leave it at, close to kind of 0-ish. This one looks a little bit loud here, so I'm just going to lower that one. Right, so we want to kind of balance it out visually, that the waves look about the same height, and then we'll just see kind of the dynamics around that. So that should be good, right? So that's kind of our first pre-mixing. Okay, and now we have, we have this track of the New York Library ambient track. So I'm just going to lower that down a little bit to like minus 18. I'm just going to solo it. Okay. And that gives us a nice little ambient there. And then there's another ambient track here, the New York City Library. And I'm just going to lower that down to about minus 18 as well.
I'm ready for my library glam day.
Right, so now we can see that that tone is pretty good. It sounds pretty natural. It's not overwhelming. So that's how we can just essentially create like a universal level. And ambient tracks are pretty cool that, they're just the same sound level the whole time essentially. So I like doing it that way, where I just put, minus 18. Usually I will say it will range from minus 15 to minus 35, depending on how loud the ambient track is, to kind of fit in with the dialogue. So that we talked about in the last session is our ambient bed track. And that ambient just carries over or under all the dialogue, no matter how we've cut it, different takes that have occurred. And that just gives us that kind of visual continuity to be able to, just keep it, continuous and not sound jarring and different as we go through it, right? So that really helps to create that kind of those two ambient tracks, just create that consistency. Now we have a kettle going off here. Okay, and we put little fades in here, and that's, again, a quick way we can just have it fade in and out. But we're going to do that in the mixing. Okay, so that's fine. We got a little bit of water pouring there. And then we have our music. And our music is a bit loud now, so I'm just going to put it down to about minus 15-ish. Again, just to kind of create a rough area, and then we can mix it up or down from there.
Top up.
Okay, so that's really our first element there. So now I'm going to show you guys how we can do some keyframe fades. So the one way I was showing is that we could do drag, and you can just make a fade, and that's going to be a fade in or out of your audio. So it's basically like a dissolve or a fade. You can do those right on the track. So that's a really cool way to do it. What I'll do now is let's look at adding the keyframes. So I'm going to click on the part that I want to highlight. So I clicked on that particular box. So now it's selected, and here's my volume. So it's just at 0. So I've done nothing with it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit a keyframe. You can see there's a keyframe has been added. And then I'm going to scroll back here to the beginning, put a keyframe. Okay, and what I'll do is then I'm going to lower this keyframe down, and now it's creating a fade in with keyframes. So you can put a bunch of these keyframes anywhere you want within in the whole sequence, and that's how we can actually ride things up or down with keyframes, and they can go up, down, up, down. So that can be with music, dialogue. That's a whole way that you can finish a mix, and that's that keyframing mix. If I'm just doing picture editing, I'll usually just do it that way, to get a rough mix in. So I understand, what's happening with it. So let's look at how we add the keyframes to fade out. So I'm going to click that. You can see there's one, and we always need two to create that, rise up and down. So this here, I'm going to just fade it down.
Top up.
Right, and then what we can do is I can click on it and I can just drag it over and make it closer. And by making it closer, I'm changing kind of the duration of that fade out. So it can be like shorter or longer. And that way I can do the longer or shorter fade in, fade outs.
Top up. Top up.
Okay, so, and then again, that one's a bit louder. So I'm just gonna look at just kind of lowering it a little bit. Okay, so that's nice. Okay, so that's our keyframing element and our ambient, and that's kind of all I would do in the picture side of things in the edit mode. So let's hop over to Fairlight and get into that and look at what some of the things we can do there. Okay, so with Fairlight, the way this works is we have all our tracks represented here. Now we have our picture here, and Fairlight is all about audio. So it's not worried anymore about the picture. So it just has our audio tracks. We're not touching the picture. And this is kind of one of those elements where ideally we always want to lock our picture. So we finish the picture editing and then we're going to mix. Now, because we're in Resolve and we can go to the different tabs, we have the convenience of changing the picture edit and then going back to the mix. But if you've timed all your music and you have your fades up and down on the music, and if there's like footsteps and all the stuff that you've done, it could be a bit of work to retime everything or remix everything, right? So the best practice is to lock your picture. Yes, you can always change some things in it, but again, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And the best practice is if you can lock and then do your sound mix, because then you're really working towards what the final is. You might still need to do end credits or things like that, so that can be added. But we really want to have all the timing done because it's crucial to get your best sound mix when you spend time on it. If you're still working on it, I would suggest just doing what we did, which is just that base leveling across the board, doing some keyframing, just to get it a rough mix for editing purposes. But I wouldn't do the final until you're actually really looking to be locked, right? So that's my advice. And things will always change. There could be different circumstances or timelines and deadlines that we might have to adapt differently, and that's okay. So here we go. We'll look at this now. So we have the dialogue here. It's audio 1. Audio 2 is dialogue 2.
Top up.
So this one's going to be dialogue 2. I'm going to call this one dialogue 1. We got a room tone 1. Oops. And this one, audio 4, I'm going to call room tone 2. Again, you might have hundreds of tracks. This is just for our demo purposes. Sound effects and music. So now we know what everything is. And I think that's always a great way, just to, label everything so you know what's going on, and we can go from there. So just had a question here that I saw pop up. So in terms of where do you add the keyframe? So I'm just going based on using the right up here. So there's the inspector, and you just add keyframe. It's this little thing right here. There's some quick commands, but I just want to go through the visuals of what it is right now. So let's just go right here in the middle. I'm going to click on this actual keyframe, and voila, there's a keyframe that's been added. Now I can select that and I can hit delete to get rid of it. So that's how we do that in the edit timeline there. Okay, so let's go back to here. What are we doing here? So the basis of this is we have our mixing window. So we just have the mixer here with faders that can go up or down. Then we have our actual tracks that are here laid down, and we have them all labeled. So dialogue 1, 2, and so on. Then we have our meters up here, and we have a master control room, and we have what's the loudness meter here. And we'll just talk about that briefly today, but just to get an idea of what's how that can work. Okay, so in here, under effects, I can add effects to any of these. So let's just have a look at what that would look like. So I can go to effects on 2, and let's say we want to add a little bit of an EQ onto the dialogue track. Okay, so let's go, I'll go to graphic EQ. So here's my graphic equalizer. And then we can adjust as we wish. So we can, we can make take the low end here on these lower ends, and we can boost maybe what's being said in the dialogue range. And maybe we want to get rid of a little bit of the higher end for some hiss removal. Just a rough representation of something. So that's that. And now we can play it back.
Top up.
Okay, so let's give that a listen.
Top up. Top up.
Okay, and let's look at what that looks like. So now here I can turn it on or off. So let's play it.
Top up.
Okay, and now off.
Top up.
Right, so you can hear how that has a bit of a lower end, and now I'm taking it off.
Top up.
Like it's a little bit higher sounding, right? So those are those little EQ things, and we can look at, getting rid of a certain area. So, fan buzzing is usually not 50, 60 hertz. So if we had something loud like that, that could be possible, right? So now let's add another one, and we'll put in let's put in an echo. Okay, and let's have a listen to what it looks like with an echo.
Top up. Top up. Top up. Top up.
Okay, so that's like with a little bit of a echo.
Top up. Top up.
Okay, so that's one. Let's go, I'm just gonna delete that plugin, so just to the right of it, and let's put in another one. Let's put in a delay. See what that sounds like.
Top up. Top up.
Right, so we can, again, how much of a delay do we want? It can sound like we're in a really big room.
Top up.
Right, so
Top up.
different types of things we can do. And so I'm just going to delete that, and let's go to another delay. We'll try this delay.
Top up. Top up. Top up. Top up. Top up.
Right, so now it sounds like we're in a canyon, right? So those are the kinds of things we can do. So any track we want, we can then add the effects to in those tracks. So that's quite a convenient way to make that work. Right, so we can just add whatever we want to there in that zone, which would be really great.
Top up. Top up.
Okay, so now that's the effects side. Right, so I have that graphics equalizer there. Now what I can do too is I can also say we want her sounding like she's on the left. So I'm just going to pan this over to the left.
Top up. Top up.
Right, so that could be kind of fun. So that's a little bit of the
Top up.
panning.
Top up.
Again, if you're not listening to this in stereo, you might not get that stereo effect of what's happening, but I'm just panning her a little bit to the left. And that's what these pan functions can do. Yeah, it's also representing a kind of a surround area, a three-dimensional space, but for this webinar, we want to just look at the front, left, right as our panning mode. Now, how do we automate this? This is the real fun part. So by clicking this little automation gangs here, this lets us make the faders hot and automated. And so what I'll do here is I'm just going to say enable the fader and the pan, so you can choose different things. And now I can actually fade things up or down, and it's going to remember that. So let's have a look at if I play with the music, fade it up and make it louder as we come in. So let's give it a whirl.
Top up. Top up. I'm ready for my library glam day.
Make my library glam day.
Okay, so that's fading the tracks up and down.
Top up. Top up. I'm ready for my library glam day.
Make my library glam day.
Okay, so that's how we can fade up or down. You can see how that fader, I've recorded that information.
Top up.
And see, the fader is just doing it on its own. I'm not doing anything there at all. So that's the really cool thing of what it's done in the actual mix, right? So it's all in the fader controls there. Now, same thing, if we can do that with this kettle, right? So let's do that again.
Top up.
Right, so I can play with the sound effects. And here, as we have it pouring,
I'm ready for my library glam day.
Make my library glam day.
and in that part,
Glam day.
we can probably get the music up again right after she says library glam day.
Glam day.
Make
Oops. Let's do that again. Here.
Glam day.
Make my library glam day.
Perfect. Okay, so that's how we can just kind of raise things up or down. Same thing we can do then with the dialogue.
Top up. Top up.
Right, so we can make things louder or quieter, and just watch the fader now.
Top up. Top up. I'm ready for my library glam day.
Okay. Now, let's just lower that down here a little bit.
Top up.
Okay, so now that's a bit too loud. That's a really great time for me to show that. So on the main one, this the fader right here, we're going way up high. So watch what happens when she says top up.
Top up.
Right, we're going above that, like -6. So let's lower that.
Top up.
Right, so everything's yellow, and that's what we like to see, is the yellow instead of hitting the red where we're clipping.
Top up. Top up. I'm ready for my library glam day.
Make my library glam day.
Okay, and then we can probably raise his there a little bit.
Make my library glam day.
Okay, so that's it. That's our leveling. And we're able to mix it through. So remember, we did our ambience. We figured out roughly where we want it. We did some of our fader moves up or down. And now let's look at the panning here. So I just wanted to do that for her to make her sound like she's off. And we'll basically pan to the left and then bring it back to the middle, which would be the center zone here.
Top up. Top up. Top up.
Right, so because I've engaged the pan at the top here, so I've engaged the pan and the fader, right? I can actually do moves on the pan. So I can do left and right things. So I can make, the kettle come in from the left or right. So let's do that as well with the kettle sound effect, which is on our sound effects right here. So let's play with that.
Top up.
Right, so now we have the kettle coming in from the left.
Top up. Top up.
Okay, and we're just going to lower that level now because it's a bit too loud.
Top up. Top up. Top up.
Okay, so that's roughly there. Let's have a look.
Top up. Top up.
Okay, and we're just going to lower her first line there a little bit.
Top.
Sorry, my mouse is just acting up on me here.
Top up. Top up.
There we go. Okay, so that we've done some panning.
Top up. Top up. I'm ready for my library glam day.
Make my library glam day.
Cool. Okay, so that's a pretty nice level so far, and so we've done the panning, the fading, and we'll go from there. So now the other thing too is on the touch. Here's one thing I wanted to explain. There's a latch, and that means it's going to just hold where I want it, and the snap is going to return to the overall level as it mixes. So that can be, really effective in terms of, so if I have the latch, wherever I have the fader, it's going to just stay there. So I go, okay, let's lower it, and it's going to stay lower, and then I'd have to bring it back up. If I use snap, I can lower it, and if I let go of it, it's going to snap back to the original level, right? So that's kind of the difference there. So let's just look at what that looks like as well. I'm just going to change it over to snap. Let's look at it in the music side here.
Top up.
So you see what happens? I raise it and it's going to snap down.
Top up.
Right, the minute I let go, it snaps down on the music fader. So that's really the difference. And the nice thing is, if we don't want it to do that,
Top up.
right? I just did a Command Z just to undo that. But the snap can be really effective because if I'm just raising the dialogue pieces for a little bit, I can raise it a bit. It's going to snap back down to the original level that I had in my editing, in my dialogue editing, in my overall levels that we did in the first stage. So I hope that helps in terms of how we can do the mixing of both sides. Now, when I play this back, let's have a look now at the top here. So the top window here, this loudness monitor is really great. So I'm just going to reset it, and we're going to play it back, and it's going to tell us what we're hitting in terms of broadcast loudness specs. So let's play it.
Top up. Top up. I'm ready for my library glam day.
Make my library glam day.
Okay, so the short, we hit, it went yellow once, but we never went red. So that's, in a nutshell, that means it's within range of loudness range monitoring.
Top up. Top
Now
up.
I hit start, and it's going to just give us all 4 ranges.
I'm ready for my library glam day.
Make my library glam day.
Perfect. So it gave us this yellow warning, right? But we never hit red. If we hit red, that means it's it's over what's acceptable in the loudness. That's it. So we basically, we start, pause, resume, and then we can constantly monitor and figure out where we are in the levels. And that would be the final thing. So once we're done with this, we simply just go back to editing, and all of our mixing that we've done
Top up.
is still there in the picture edit mode. All our Fairlight work is there. So we just go back and forth, and it's all there. And that's really how integrated and simple it is to do the the work on this Fairlight tab within Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve. Cool. Okay, so let's we got a few minutes left here. So if there's any questions, I think there's just a question about downloading the video. So what we'll have is the workshop will you can rewatch it. So we'll post it on our YouTube channel, and then we're gonna re-upload this one because we'll probably be missing the top end of it because we had that freeze in terms of the streaming freeze, and so we'll we'll reload that and then so you have that. Now in terms of questions, I would just generally, again, recommend that range that, we talked about -6, -20. We're looking at our VU meters, those 2 meters, the main one. We don't want to hit red. So if you avoid the red, and that's fine. And now, sometimes you might hear things and they sound really loud, right? And that's because maybe people are pushing it, going a little bit higher and stuff. But in terms of what is kind of the professional standards and broadcast standards and what you'd want for festivals is that kind of a range. So I really recommend working within that range to fit within that and make it work. So yeah, if there's any questions, let me know. But again, we're going from the edit to the Fairlight. That loudness meter right there, yellow is good. Anything that went red would be overpowering. So I can just let's just look at what it would look like if we made it too loud in the red zone.
Library glam day.
Okay, so you see that, then it goes short +5. That means it's out of the range, and we've maxed out on our main level as well. So I'm just going to undo that.
Library glam day. Library glam day. Library glam day.
Right, and now we're good. So here's that main meter.
Library glam day.
Right, so if I'm staying within the yellow and not going to the red, then it works out pretty well. Okay, so here's a question. Does Resolve plug in the Fairlight? Okay, so Fairlight is part of Resolve. So it comes with within, and it's integrated. It comes with several of the filters and effects and so on. And you'll see there's what's available. it's not tons of stuff, but you can also add in other plugins. So, any kind of plugins that you want to use, you can add in, and it will work within that. So just make sure that they'll work with Fairlight. I would always ask that or look at that spec. It tends to be the same like with Pro Tools plugins. All of those plugins will work in here as well. And in terms of editing ambisonic sound in here, you can do that. You just need to then have the studio version. So the free version won't let you do that, but you can go up to the studio version, which is about $400 Canadian, and then you would be able to do that as well. So it would give you some more sound features in the studio version. And so I'm just trying to remember if this is the studio version right here that we're actually demoing with. So we would be able to do ambisonic editing within this one, but the regular one wouldn't. So that's great question. We're hoping to do a little bit more on that too with 360 video and ambisonic sound. So yeah, really interesting sphere to work in, and in podcasts I think that would be really cool too. So yeah, great question. So yeah, I think that covers most of the things. The one thing I should mention too is once you're done, I always, you can hit this off and turn this red function off so that you don't keep adjusting. So if that's turned off, you no longer have the ability to do any more of this automation panning, right? So we want to always turn those that automation tool off. We can also do like a loop here to create like an in and out to like loop around and mix in a certain area. This is really short, 21 seconds. We could be working on something that's 2 minutes, 2 hours, and so on, that you'd want to have looping areas that you can work at like a few minutes at a time. So yeah, that's perfect. So yeah, so let's I will repost this and have it all ready for you guys to watch again on Crowdcast. Again, apologize for that tech glitch that we had, but you'll be able to watch the second half, which is all the mixing part, and then we'll re-upload the whole thing as soon as we can. And then always go to our YouTube channel. All of these webinars we post on there as fast as we can. And I put a link in the beginning that takes you back to the sound design and editing for video workshop that we did in December. So please watch that, and you'll see how we got to the point where we're at today. Again, intro sessions. Let us know if you like what you're seeing and hearing, and we can continue into some more advanced and intermediate sessions on these topics as well. But we'll definitely have some more select areas coming up. So check that out. And like I said, a couple weeks from now, if you go to events.tbmcs.ca, you can sign up for the mastering for film festivals, and we'll talk about DCP mastering, like ProRes, and what festivals need and formats they need for your projects when you're finishing. So that'll be a really fun workshop to do as well. Okay, so I'm just gonna sign off on here, and want to just again thank all of our partners in making this happen. We have the Canada Council for the Arts, and we have our library partners, Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. So yeah, again, thanks to everyone. Thanks for coming, and I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.